Muscle and Feels, the big return. Cheerio. Fairlife milk, for those that are watching, for those that are not watching, we are holding two, not jugs, bottles of Fairlife chocolate milk, the nectar of gods, which was very difficult to find here in NYC. Anyways, Muscle and Feels live from New York City, the city of dreams, the city that never sleeps, Australian for some reason, the city that birthed a lot of our favorite rappers, including Jay-Z, MF Doom, Nas, Sean Price.
I love you interspersing my favorites with your favorites.
Yeah, I was being inclusive.
I respect it.
It's 2023. We out here. Back for another episode. Actually back. There was a long hiatus. Summer holidays. Grind said, work, a lot of things going on our respective ends. Holidays.
We don't take those. We stay hard.
Holidays are essentially the days where you work together, work more than usual, and thus celebrate work by working extra.
I only take holidays to confuse my enemies. My enemies think I'm away on holidays not grinding, and then they see me, I come back, emerge victorious.
6 steps ahead. When you think I won't take a holiday, I take a holiday. But in reality, I'm not taking a holiday, and you're like, I knew it. Then I'm like, yep, holiday time. You never know. Always keep them guessing. Anyways, we are back. We have been gone for a while because we have been working on our respective content. Milo's YouTube channel, up and coming, already almost 3,000 subscribers.
You know it, major influencer.
Mr. Beast right now, shaking.
We know for a fact he's sweating.
Yes.
You hear me?
Definitely. My channel is not out yet, but we've been doing a lot of filming for that. And what else do we have going on?
We're out here in New York. We're doing research.
New York, research, science, science.
Muscle and Feels.
Indeed. Yeah. So we are in New York not just for a research project that we're working on and not to just visit the lab that we are essentially part of, but rather we're also here so that we can travel to the near Canada, the near...
Very true.
Yes, to see certain people and film other cool stuff that will be coming out soon. More on that when it comes out. However,
we are out here.
We are outside, as some would say. And there's been a lot of things happening, not just on our personal fronts, but also in the world of fitness, in the world of controversy, in the controversial world of sports science of all fields. Who would have thought that sports science could be so controversial?
After my world-ending beef with one Paul Carter, we've switched targets. We are now beefing with one Jared Fetta. Now, you might be thinking, hold on a sec. Didn't he used to work for Renaissance Periodization? I thought Jared was one of the good ones. Well, he is, by and large. But we have had some online back and forth, a bit of beef over full range of motion and length and partials.
It's one of those again, isn't it?
It's one of those length and partial episodes.
Episode 44. And so let's take it back a second. Obviously, if you're listening to this or watching it, you know that Milo has done his PhD on range of motion, strength hypertrophy, partials at long muscle length seem to be equal or better than full ROM based on the current evidence. But for some reason, this is something that the evidence-based and I guess the whole fitness community to a certain extent has been very skeptical about. Now, it is an antithetical sort of practice to what we're used to, and like the most basic things that, like you asked ChatGPT today about range of motion, what did it say?
Use full range of motion.
Yeah, so full range of motion is something that makes sense intuitively. We've heard that it's science-based and it's what you're supposed to do, and therefore, I get some sort of knee-jerk response. However, it seems like people are viewing the promotion of long muscle length training, and more specifically partials, as sort of a gimmick or as something...
There's an agenda.
Or it's like there's an agenda. And for you specifically, as somebody who worked and still works with Renaissance periodization in some capacity, there's always like a YouTube collaboration with Mike or something else going on in the behind the scenes. I'd say personally, and fully biased as your friend and lover, that if there was...
Stay hard.
Yeah, stay hard. That if anything, if your PhD had found that a full range of motion is really, really the shit when it comes to muscle growth, that would have made you essentially Mr. Full ROM, the guy, and RP would have potentially promoted you even more, in my opinion. Let's say like it was big news. It wouldn't surprise me if there was much more content with you on their channel, showing off your research and making you a coach or whatever.
For sure. I mean, to their credit, they've also promoted our research, even though it doesn't promote full range of motion, it doesn't show full range of motion to be best.
I'm just saying that if there was an argument to be made pro you finding something, the business move wouldn't be, oh, let's now tell people, hey, this basic thing that you've learned your whole life may not be the best.
100%. So going into the PhD, my PhD was actually funded by Renaissance Periodization in part. And I was working for Renaissance Periodization, and I was full range of motion pilled. You can ask anyone, you can see my old videos. I was doing full range of motion on every exercise. I was finding ways to increase the range of motion on every exercise, as far as like even the lockout, you know. So I was very pro for range of motion, both from an educational perspective, you know, that was what the evidence said at the time, I thought. I was pro for range of motion as far as my sort of bias going into it, my internal bias, if you will. And gradually, and you kind of saw this happen, I think, I had to change my stance, because more evidence came out suggesting lengthened partials were better than full range of motion. And, you know, I had to change from doing only full range of motion to incorporating some lengthened bias work, lengthened partials being the most self-evident and directly studied method of applying lengthened bias to your training. So, I don't know, it kind of felt weird to get called out for promoting what the evidence suggested, as opposed to just sticking with my bias, I guess. It was weird. Yeah,
for sure. And as somebody who has seen Milo train over the years, the switch to partials was, the deeper he got in the literature, the more he was switching over, and it was just a case of, I mean, that's what the evidence shows, that's what I'm going to do. And the evidence, and that's a cope that we hear quite a bit, and it's somewhat being parroted, obviously in like very, very narrow echo chambers that we exist in, because I think the majority of people, actually, to be fair, long muscle length training is making a slight like transition to more mainstream audiences slowly. But anyways, people that discuss the number of studies around the topic are still in our niche. And something that we're hearing a lot is that, oh, you're jumping the gun here a bit, guys. There's not enough evidence. It's just a couple of studies. People don't realize also that the one study you've published on range of motion is a literature review. It's not a study that you did.
For sure. Because they don't read studies, it turns out.
For sure.
So, a few things on that. One is, not to go back and forth about the topic, but when Team Full Range of Motion was first established, there were actually not many more comparisons of full ROM to partial ROM than there is now for lengthened partials versus full ROM. So when the argument's made that, oh, we're jumping the gun here, not enough studies to really make the claim that lengthened partials are better than full range of motion, well, it's worth keeping in mind that when Team Full ROM, for example, was first established, a similar amount of data was available. And in fact, if you want to go outside of the direct comparisons between full range of motion and lengthened partials, you'll find there's a total of 25 studies or so comparing more shortened training to more lengthened training. So for example, we have 6 studies comparing isometric contractions at longer versus shorter muscle lengths. We have 9 or 8 studies now actually comparing partials at different muscle lengths. So shorter muscle length partials versus longer muscle length partials. We have approximately, I want to say, 6 studies comparing full range of motion to shortened partials. And we have 5 studies comparing lengthened partials to full range of motion. So essentially, all of these studies are some iteration of shorter muscle length training versus longer muscle length training and measuring hypertrophy. And very consistently across these 25 studies, they find that longer muscle length training is better for hypertrophy. So yes, we have only 5 studies comparing full range of motion to lengthened partials, but for the general principle, like, it should come to almost no surprise to anyone that lengthened partials are likely better for muscle growth than full range of motion based on the overall literature. So I hear your argument, there's only 5 direct comparisons, but really, in light of the rest of the evidence, I think those 5 studies stand for a bit more than just 5 studies, as they say.
For sure. And if we want to be pedantic, ultra pedantic for the sake of it, you could also make the argument that extended full ROM as seen and promoted in practice has never been actually directly researched. So the current evidence that we have, the majority of studies, the definition of full ROM is what you'd essentially categorize as standard ROM.
Or long ROM.
Yeah, or long ROM.
Like squat to parallel or just below parallel, not ass to grass as a lot of range of motion users do.
Yes.
So, there's a bit of a caveat there as well as far as applying full range of motion to your training or how it used to be applied. There is a difference with the lengthened partial versus full range of motion literature, where, for example, for the calf raise, they literally go to a deep stretch for the lengthened partial and the full range of motion condition. So that has changed a little bit, but at the time, it was like we'd studied long range of motion versus less long range of motion, not full range of motion versus partial range of motion.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I do think it's the topic that sort of fuels this controversy, because for my systematic review, where I looked at the minimum dose for essentially the power lifts in trained individuals, there was only 6 studies that were included in the review that met the inclusion criteria. None of them were like in traditionally designed strength sort of setups. None included the deadlift, and none included women. Yet people, and obviously cool, the literature on minimum dose training, there's other studies on single set training and so on and so forth. But as far as practical applications for powerlifters and for strength training enthusiasts, people were just super confident with just looking at the results and taking that and applying it. Obviously then more data came out on powerlifters and that sort of sealed the deal. But at the same time, nowhere near as much skepticism as the current events. And there's a lot of stuff that people are promoting out there or following with a lot of confidence. And back in the day, that was the case back in the day as well with things like frequency and hypertrophy. All it took was one meta-analysis that was then overturned by the same authors a couple of years later. But all it took was that one meta-analysis for everybody to swear by training a muscle twice a week. Because that makes sense intuitively. And that was something that fit a lot of people's bias. Whereas partials at long muscle lengths are, slightly, if not a lot more edgy and different.
For sure. And it's been interesting to see relatively evidence-based or proclaimed evidence-based fitness pros, evidence-based, quotation marks, turn up their nose at the concept of lengthened partials. In this case with Jared, just to give you an idea of the beef, because I realize now we never actually said what the beef was. We just name dropped and left it at that.
Bless. He won.
He won.
Fuck you, Milo.
I'll give a very brief summary without making it dramatic. Basically, he made a story accusing me of internal bias, like being biased and in some way, whether consciously or unconsciously, about lengthened partials being better than full range of motion. Which is interesting because, as I said, if anything, my bias going into the PhD was pro full range of motion, I think. And also just said that essentially there's not enough data and that the people making claims about lengthened partials being better than full range of motion are resorting to a lot of conjecture. Now, I disagree with that, and as Pac said, I think there's a lot of topics where you could argue there's a lot of more conjecture going on. Like, on some topics, even things that, for example, Renaissance Periodization sometimes does, or other companies do, there is no evidence. There's literally no evidence, no direct evidence to base their practice off of. So
it's an educated guess.
For sure.
Yeah, and we're fine with that. Not we as in like, as if we're two holy...
married lovers?
Yeah, that too. But we as in the fitness enthusiasts, the lifting enthusiasts that are evidence-based are fine with that. Because like, cool, this is our best educated guess here. But at the same time, if we're fine with that, when you have the amount of studies that you just mentioned for a certain topic, then it becomes much more than an educated guess. But even if you want to take it down to the educated guess level, your best educated guess at the moment, as far as length, muscle length training goes, is partials at long muscle lengths.
And in fact, if you want to be even more skeptical, Well, let's take the other stance. Let's say that full range of motion is better than lengthened partials. All right, where's your citation? Because I don't think there is one. There is no study where full range of motion has outperformed lengthened partials for hypertrophy. There just isn't. There's 4 studies where lengthened partials have done better for hypertrophy. There's 1 study where it's been the same hypertrophy whether you did full range of motion or lengthened partials, but there is no study showing that full range of motion was better for hypertrophy. So if anything, that's conjecture. But, you know.
No, I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you don't know.
Listen, you have the lower body, but you don't have the upper body.
So yeah, just that accusation of bias and the claim that conjecture was being used frivolously. So then I thought about my options, and I responded in a somewhat joking way on my story. Actually, the first response I made was essentially pointing out some of the inconsistencies in saying it was speculative and saying we don't have much evidence. I pointed out the 25 studies. I even kind of did the same thing as with Paul Cotter, where I just made a joke. At some point I was like, I referenced my paper and put a link to my paper on range of motion, and I captioned the link as for Jared Feather, brackets, science denier, which was obviously a joke. And then, indeed.
People that are listening, I'm making a face now,
Indeed.
sorry.
To which he responded, to be fair, because he made another post of an excerpt from a Renaissance periodization video where Mike Israetel was speaking about full range of motion and why it was potentially better in some cases. And essentially, many of the same claims were made again, except this time he tagged me, where he said that, oh, it's mostly speculative, so I responded with some stories. And in response to those stories, he then messaged me apologizing for some of the more accusations of bias.
Because that was the whole issue.
That was mostly the issue, but I think...
The point is weak. The point that was made was weak.
Yeah.
But why the... Why the bias accusation?
I think the bias accusation was honestly just unnecessary, and I actually called this out previously when Dr. Soko on Instagram.
Soko on these nuts?
Indeed.
Sorry, man. No, it's not.
No, it's personal. Because he accused researchers, namely Daniel Plotkin, for example, of being biased and not conducting research properly, as they were funded by Contreras.
Oh.
And it's like, dude, accusing researchers of bias is not a good look.
Unless you have
evidence.
Yeah.
Fuck. Even when Barbalo and colleagues, to name the wrongfully accused authors, were on the hook for essentially making up data, even then the people calling them out didn't accuse them of fraud directly. They were just highly improbable. Meanwhile, fucking Dr. Soko over here accusing people of bias directly.
I didn't know
He didn't
that.
like the results of a study.
Did he?
That's crazy to me. You know, it's the same with this now, where it's like, bro, just because you don't like my interpretation of the pretty difficult to misinterpret literature, it's pretty clear. Just because you don't like my interpretation, accusing me of internal bias is not it. You won't find it.
I found it.
You have to scroll the comments to find the comment, but I made a story about it at the time. But yeah, accusing a researcher of internal bias, no good. So essentially, we are at war with Team Full Wrong. We have major beef.
And by major beef, we mean give us money and we'll be fine. And we don't have any beef. And everything is cool and we love everyone. But it's honestly a bit, I don't know. I think it's weird. Obviously be skeptical, and if in 5 years, and I'm saying it now, and you can quote me when I'm saying no, I never said it. I don't mean what I said, or what I will say is that if in 5 years we have, let's say 5 or 6, or even let's say 3 studies come out showing that full ROM is superior to partials at long muscle lengths, and those studies have a sound design and so on and so forth. I'll be the first, and Milo will be the first to say, okay, well, yes, we were wrong. At the same time, it doesn't make sense to just go against something just because it's popping, and we've all been there. We've all hated on the mainstream shows on TV just because they're super mainstream, but then we all watched Casa de Papel and enjoyed it. So except Milo. But Milo doesn't watch shows, so it's an exception.
I don't even get the reference.
Yeah, it was just one of those shows that was popping. Every Greek was watching it. Everybody here was watching it, and I was
Every
like,
Greek watching it doesn't amount to popularity, does it?
huh?
Every Greek watching it doesn't amount to popularity.
No, but it was that famous. It's a Spanish show.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was that famous that even the Greeks were watching it, and it kept popping up on my Netflix. And I was like, everybody watches this. All the normies are watching it. And then I watched it, and I was like, wow, that was nice.
Respect.
That was awesome. And that's partial of long musclings right now.
Hopefully. I mean...
Hopefully up. There you go. There's the bias.
Hey, look.
I mean, yeah, it would be a bad look in a few years.
Put the money away.
It would be a bad look,
Yeah.
but
No, it wouldn't be a bad look.
It wouldn't be.
Stance is the thing. Like,
but again, like it's like
I've done it before. I've changed my stance before, and I'm willing to do it again.
it's the same with volume as well, right? Like
52 sets a week. Don't you know? The reference is there's a study that's going to be published soon, where 52 sets per week per muscle group resulted in more growth than I want to say like 18 and 32 or something. Like more moderate volumes. So essentially, you got to be doing 52 sets a week now to maximize your growth. You're welcome.
yeah, and strength increases as well. We haven't read the study. We just heard the results.
We saw results essentially.
So, but what I was going to say is that it's the same as, let's say, training volume. Let's say in the next few years, somehow moderate, like 6 to 8 sets appear to be better than 10 plus. Whatever. At the moment, though, our best guess, based on the current evidence, is that, and again, guys and girls and gender-neutral individuals, there's no studies at the moment to say, yeah, but guys, there's a couple of studies that show, like, at the moment, it's either partials and long musclings win, or they're equal to full ROM. Like, there's nothing else. Plus, all the short versus long studies show again that in principle, it's long musclings that are important. However, we shall see.
Indeed.
So, yeah, that's the ROM wars, essentially. Ladies and gentlemen.
Comment down below to let me know who won. Comment number 1 for Jared Feather. Number 2 for Milo Wolf. And don't forget to hit that bell and subscribe.
There was a bit of an Alpha Destiny accent there, old school.
If you know, you know.
Alex Leonidas, what you got there, Phil?
Yeah,
Respect.
we're at the buffet right now.
Shout out Alpha Destiny.
Shout out Alex Leonidas.
And his Alpha Destiny. So, the one thing that we wanted to a few things actually. MyoAdapt update for the app, therefore
What is MyoAdapt, bro?
MyoAdapt is the app that Milo and I have been working on for the past 2 years, aka Milo mostly for the past few months. The algorithm training, head coach, expert, senior engineer, physique specialist, science educator, communicator, trademark. The app that is supposed to offer the next best thing after premium coaching, fully, highly individualized, customizable app that can literally generate any program you want. Even if you want to train once a week and do just abs and calves, it will literally generate a program and adjust that for you and give you a plethora of exercises to choose from. We are planning to release a muscle growth only version to start with, even though we've worked on a powerlifting and a power building mode as well. So essentially at the beginning will be just for hypertrophy training, obviously with a slight modification here and there. You can also do your strength training on top. But yes, we are now getting closer and closer to actually having our first testing round, a beta testing. Obviously, we've been testing the app. And we are super excited to start talking about it a bit more and more because at some point it will have to hit the market. Trust me, you will know when it's out. And the main difference with this app and other apps is that it's not template based. It is not an app that just takes a bunch of ready templates and populates them, but rather, as I said, fully from scratch, as a coach would do, program and weekly adjustments. Bunch of questions at the beginning to figure out exactly what's solid for you, and then every week a few other questions so you can adjust and allow you to progress optimally. In other words, aka nothing matters anyways, just train, so don't buy the app. And yeah.
Or do buy the app, because not only is it not template based, so we generate the programs from scratch to fit you as an individual, but there is also a lot of science in there. For example, recently as we discussed in this episode, the impact of long muscle length training has been shown to be relatively influential. So previously, for example, to give you a bit of an insight, we would rate exercises in terms of how effective they are for muscle growth. So, for example, we would categorize exercises by whether or not they place the target muscle in a contracted position, yes or no. Does it put tension in that position, yes or no. Likewise for a stretch position. And then each of these factors, about 20 factors total, would be weighted by a certain amount. And previously we thought that longer muscle length training was somewhat important, and now we think it's more important. So essentially we made the long muscle length aspect, so getting a stretch in the exercise, more important, so that exercises that do involve a stretch position and do make that position challenging are now prioritized by the app. So that when you use the app, it'll select the best exercises for you based on the most recent evidence. The same goes, for example, for making sure the target muscle group is being trained close to failure. Previously, we thought that was less important for hypertrophy. Now, based on some of the more recent evidence, we do think that ideally, when you do a set of pull downs, for example, your lats would be trained to failure when you take a set of lat pull downs to failure. And so we've updated the formulas as well. And that's something that we'll be doing all throughout the app, is update the formulas involved, so that all throughout you get the best exercises for muscle growth possible based on the latest evidence. So just one of the things that we do in the app to make sure we deliver the best results. Another thing is, although Pat mentioned, rightly so, that for the strength mode, the powerlifting aspect of the app, the power building aspect of the app as well, all of which will be options as far as your goals go eventually. While that will take a bit more time, initially it'll be a muscle growth only app, that release shouldn't take too long.
No.
Obviously there's some terms and conditions there where we're not 100% sure yet, but ultimately the logic underlying that mode is very similar, and we don't foresee it taking too long to hit the market as well.
Exactly. And in general, we are, and again, terms and conditions apply, we're not entirely sure on the pricing of the app just yet, but it is quite likely that it will be cheaper than most training, if not, I mean most, I guess there's other training apps as well.
I think it'll be cheaper than most. Yeah.
Super cheap, and as cheap as the average gym subscription in Europe at least, because here in the US we're paying, in NYC specifically, quite a bit.
$200 a month.
Yeah, which is not unheard of at all. Yeah, it's
pretty
crazy.
normal here.
NYC, I mean, anyways, we could get into
PayPal
that.
us some money, please.
Money, please.
We will take it.
Dr. Mike, we're sorry. Full ROM.
Pro for ROM again.
Pro for ROM, looks great. Lever, lockout.
More apparel, please.
And we're also working on a few studies at the moment as part of the Applied Muscle Development Lab. Shout out to the whole lab.
Okay, what you got there, Phil?
What you got there,
What are we
Phil?
doing?
And shout out to the man himself, Dr. Schoenfeld.
Big Brad.
Shout out to all the team and amazing birthday. I'm shouting everyone now, cafeteria
Shout
people.
out my mom for raising me.
So the study that, actually I'll let you talk about the study that we're helping with now. It's a study led by Ryan Burke. Awesome.
Shout out Ryan Burke.
Up-and-coming researcher. You may have seen his name on a few papers, actually, that we've been sharing on Instagram and we've had the pleasure of collaborating with, who is doing his master's now at Lehman. And he's also an adjunct professor, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me take it away.
And an awesome wrestler.
We know for a fact you don't care about hypertrophy, and you care even less about hypertrophy of the calves. So let me take this one. So this study, essentially using a within participant design, which means for each participant that comes to the lab, their legs are assigned to one of two conditions. One condition will do, for the calves, a seated calf raise. The other leg, the contralateral leg, will do a leg press calf raise. So essentially with the knees extended. What this does is when you're doing a seated calf raise, the gastroc is more shortened. When you're doing a leg press calf raise, because your knee is extended and the gastroc is a knee flexor, your gastroc is more lengthened. Now, the prevailing thinking in the bodybuilding sphere has always been that gotta do seated calf raises for soleus, and gotta do standing calf raises or any calf raise with your knee extended to hit the gastroc, right? But essentially, there has been no study to date to confirm whether or not this is true. Do seated calf raises actually grow your soleus more? And in fact, based on the most recent data on muscle length training, as we just discussed, it turns out there might just be a benefit to doing straight leg calf raises over seated calf raises, because they'll deliver the same hypertrophy for the soleus, but more hypertrophy for the gastroc on account of training the gastroc at longer muscle lengths. So that's one component of the study, comparing seated calf raises in one leg to leg press calf raises in the other leg. The second component is also looking at the quads. Specifically, again, one leg will be doing the leg extension, and the contralateral leg will be doing leg press. Again, kind of a similar situation, where for a long time now in the bodybuilding sphere, we have thought that a knee extension isolation movement, like a leg extension, is essentially required to optimize growth of the rectus femoris. The rectus femoris is one part of the quad muscle that both extends the knee, but also flexes the hip.
Allegedly.
And so during compounds, it's kind of like the hamstrings during the squat. It's shortening at one joint, and it's lengthening at the other, which prevents it from really being trained effectively. And so in order to effectively train the rectus femoris, you would need to do an isolation exercise, like a leg extension, to be able to shorten it and lengthen it effectively during the concentric and eccentric phase. And comparing that to a leg press, which there is some evidence that a leg press could be better for vastus medialis, vastus lateralis growth. And so essentially seeing whether or not that holds true as well. Do you actually need quadricep isolation movements to fully target and hypertrophy the rectus femoris? Both of these are hypotheses that have been around for a long time in the bodybuilding sphere, but it'd be useful to get some data as to whether or not it's actually true. Could you get the same growth, for example, in the vastus lateralis and the vastus medialis in the leg extension versus a leg press? Could you just do leg extensions and get all the quad growth you need?
Yes,
Hopefully.
for sure.
Hopefully.
Inshallah. But
I'm sick of squatting and leg pressing.
yeah, I'm sick of I'm squatting now, so cool. See you in a few months.
One single.
I'm doing a handful of singles per week, I want to get my high bar squat around 500 pounds, so I can consistently hit 500 pounds as a single. It's nothing too crazy, obviously, but for high bar that would be a PR for me.
Really?
Yeah, I've never.
Oh, wow.
The most I've done high bar, I think, is 200 kilos for like sets of 5. But obviously, I was
What
training
about high?
low bar. High, I've never trained high.
Wow.
I actually got super high once and was like, I'm gonna go to the gym now at 2 a.m. But like stoned out of my mind when I was like 19 or something. And I walked to the gym. I googled training high. I saw that I might have some deleterious health effects. My anxiety was like, maybe don't do that. And then I just left. I literally sat on the bench, googled, and then left. Got some steps in though. Health.
So you didn't go hard, but you went home.
Yes, I just got high, went gym, went home. Ryan Burke, I wanted to mention, is the author, and I was like, just let me just get the title of the study straight. The effects of creatine supplementation combined with resistance training, original measures of muscle hypertrophy, a systematic review and meta-analysis. On the creatine study that made the rounds, where results showed that creatine may not be as insane for muscle growth as we thought, but at the same time it's still really good, and it depends on how you look at the results. I think Greg Nuggles did a nice write-up where he was like, look guys, the gains are still worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not
to my knowledge, it essentially came down to a difference in how effect sizes are interpreted in the statistical nomenclature versus in the
practical,
the actual measurement, right?
For sure.
When we're talking about muscle mass itself, skeletal muscle mass, what have you, it accounted for like an extra pound or two a year.
Yeah.
Whereas in statistical terms, in effect size terms, that meant trivial.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. In practical terms, and given also the overall safety profile of creatine, the fact that
it's cheap,
has
other benefits,
has strength benefits, like the strength benefits are well established. Yeah. There is very little preliminary evidence on cognition as well.
Okay, is it limited? I've seen some. Is it limited overall?
It hints on something positive. It hints slightly, but on a bunch of different subcategories of cognition as well. So not just cognitive performance, memory, recovery from like head trauma, concussion.
I've placeboed myself. I will live forever.
Exactly. Yeah, creatine is really solid. So the outcome of the study was like, okay, you're not going to be gaining, because some of the previous studies that had used DEXA and BOTPOD and other measures of body composition rather than direct hypertrophy measures, like you are hearing numbers like, oh, you're going to gain a few kilos or like a solid few pounds. You've said
an extra about 2.3 pounds, I think, per year in a year of lifting. So
okay.
Not that extreme. That's an extra kilogram. But yeah, that was the meta-analysis, I believe, by Kandau.
Yes,
Kandau, he's a big creatine guy.
He's on this paper as well.
What's the coincidence here?
And he actually got. I made a meme about this study, and he
was mad about it.
He was like, he wasn't.
Nice guy, though.
Yeah, a real nice guy, and I DM'd him, and he wasn't mad about it at all, because I was like, oh, I hope I didn't.
Listen, Darren, don't make us do you like they did Jared. You don't want the beef, bro. Trust me.
Meanwhile, how they did Jared?
Yeah. Hey, I don't really agree with you.
a few civilized DMs back and forth.
Yeah, indeed.
So. Anyways, I was looking for the post on creatine, but yeah, there was a bit of a back and forth because I did give all my usual disclaimers and said, hey, creatine is still a top supplement, and that
Meanwhile, the meme was creatine is shit. Fuck you, Darren. Fuck you, Darren. Fuck you, Darren. Just 10 times over.
The post literally starts with, "This is by no means a creatine bashing post. Creatine is definitely a supplement worth considering if you're serious about muscle related gains, and it may still help you gain more muscle mass. It's just not as much as previously thought." That was it. Wow. And a bunch of other disclaimers.
All right, Darren, it's war.
Okay, we are also working on, well, I mean, this study has not started yet, but it will.
There's also the superset one.
Okay, go on.
Let's hit the superset one first to hit them in chronological order. This semester, we're running the leg press leg extension, seated calf raise, leg press calf raise study.
Just to be clear, we as in the lab is running, so, so it doesn't look like we're here.
It's not Pack and I. In fact, our roles are smaller than most of the people's involved.
Yeah, so shout out to them.
Shout out to the lab. Next semester, we'll be running, and again,
I'll edit that out now.
Indeed, yeah.
We'll have it on record that we said,
we can say it to show and tell.
The Milo Impact study. Your names are not on there. Yeah, but Brad did.
Next semester, we'll be running a study looking at essentially whether or not supersetting two opposing muscle groups, I believe. Right? I don't think actually they're opposing. I think they're just two different exercises, right?
I'm not
different muscle groups. I'm pretty sure it's not antagonistic. It's just different muscle groups. So, for example, supersetting an RDL with a lateral raise, right? Where there are completely different muscle groups involved, and so theoretically, besides some of the systemic components, doing a set of RDLs, if you take a minute or two of rest to kind of catch your breath, doing a set of lateral raises after that, before returning to RDLs a few minutes later, shouldn't really negatively impact performance. And the evidence we have on performance does suggest actually, you can superset two exercises, and if there's no real overlap in terms of musculature, your performance won't be negatively impacted. And the two studies we have on actual hypertrophy also suggest you'll see the same hypertrophy as if you just did, for example, RDLs for 3 sets, and then followed it with 3 sets of lateral raises, versus going back and forth between the two and supersetting the two with some rest between each set. So while we have 2 studies suggesting for hypertrophy, really good option that will literally cut down your session duration by 1/3 to half, while keeping the same hypertrophy effects, we need more data.
Yeah.
And so that's what this study will be trying to look at.
Nice. We are now at where the next study would be the technique study, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, in the summer. So that I think that deserves its own sort of episode. Essentially, a study that will look at whether strict versus non-strict exercise technique influences hypertrophy differently. However, because we gotta mention the groundwork that needs to be done for that study to happen, because the methods will be informed by other studies, I think we'll just park that for a second and dedicate a proper episode to it. There's also a reps in reserve single set study, so whether all single sets are created equal.
High intensity training, heavy duty.
Heavy duty, heavy booty, as they say. Booty.
I'm not sure they say that.
They don't say it.
If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you don't.
This study is being designed as we speak, and literally as we speak. I actually have the document open with the
Big volume is on the run.
Big volume.
We got them now.
But to be fair, it doesn't like this is like they paid the lab even more this time because they were like, look, we gotta throw them off our trail.
Some good work, you know. He's been promoting big volume a lot lately, so now.
No, but big volume was like, okay, 4D chess. We're gonna now throw them off our trail by saying, hey, they also did like a single set study. We're not gonna compare to higher volume. It's just gonna be single set versus single sets, and just kind of make it seem as if like, oh, look, they're promoting single sets, and then big volume is covered.
Before you know it, there'll be 80 sets per week per muscle group, and it's optimal.
This is the one paper that, again, we haven't read, but it's...
nightmare-inducing.
It's nightmare-inducing. Imagine the headlines. 52 sets per week is optimal.
Man.
Oh, well, some people are going to have a hard time. It's going to be like...
Lyle McDonald will lose his shit.
Just the Lyle video. I mean, okay, the Lyle insanity streak will be worth it. So, sorry, Lyle. Insanity as in the frequency of posting that I expect from you. And the like 6 1-hour videos breaking down the study. Additionally, I wanted to say big volume. It's the people that will be doing 52 sets is just an inside joke for us. Like the people during the watch craze in the last summer buying a Daytona for 45,000 and then being like, oh, okay, it's half its value now. Imagine the poor schmucks.
Worse muscle growth. It turns out that was just a fluke study.
Yeah, I got Rambo twice, but it's Rambo.
Rambo.
Rambo. Sylvester Stallone behind them. Nice watch collection, though.
Nice watch collection indeed.
Okay, so yeah, single set study, essentially single set to failure versus single set leaving 2 reps in reserve, and making sure that participants are just familiar with and accurate at predicting reps in reserve. A lot of stuff built in. Once the methods are finalized, we can talk more about it. But that's happening as well. A narrative review on technique as well as a survey study on technique.
You forgot to give the rationale behind both the technique study and this one. With the technique study,
but
the reason we're doing it is because, you always say good technique is crucial before you do any more sets. Make sure your technique's perfect and before you add weight, etc. And it's like, do we actually have any evidence that good technique is better than bad technique?
And what does good technique constitute? Because we have a bunch of papers on different variables for optimizing hypertrophy, but we haven't really sat down and said, okay, look, the optimal repetition should look like this based on the literature. And we do hear a lot of things, as you said, and different things.
For sure. And then with the single set study, the rationale is essentially that you hear a lot of people say, well, you can make really solid gains with just 1 set per session. And while that's true, there is also the claim that to get the most out of that set, you really need to train to failure. Now, based on the most recent meta-analysis by Zach Robinson and colleagues, shout out Zach.
Yo!
There is likely a benefit to going all the way to failure. That's my hunch, and that's my prediction for that study. But it's worth checking whether actually could you just get the same benefits training a few reps shy of failure for that 1 set you do per session. Because if so, then that's a lot easier to tell people versus making them go all the way to failure, especially for people who are a bit more skeptical of failure.
Look, there's a course at the moment that, like...
We'll take care of all of it.
Yeah. Anyways, I wanted to make a joke, but hey-ho. Say what?
Proceed, make the joke.
Okay, so there is a course, though, that you could take, and when it's launched, it will be $400, but at the moment, you can save, and it's $279. I just clicked on Dr. Soko's page, and...
Suck on these nuts.
There was a course. Shout out, Doctor. I have to balance the beef, because I don't know the guy. No, I don't know the guy. He seems to be of Polish descent.
So you gotta respect that.
I respect that, brother. Shout out to you. And I'm your friend in this beef. Fuck Milo and Daniel. No, shout out Daniel. No,
we're beefing everyone.
We're beefing, you know.
Calling out everyone. That's the title of the episode.
Awesome. So
what you got there, Phil?
What you got there, Phil? Shout out to whoever gets this reference. And shout out to Milo.
Comment down below if you got the reference. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hit the notification icon. And go fuck yourself.
We've lost him.
No, I wanted to do the Blaha impression.
Listen, bro, it's 10 p.m. on a Tuesday.
We're
out here in the undisclosed location business center.
It is literally called business center here. This is a communal space. Yeah, it is really business. But plenty of studies coming. Are we forgetting something? I'm sure there's going to be a few other papers that may not be actual like RCTs that will be.
I love how we're just rolling with it now. We're saying RCTs like people. Exactly.
And I stopped because I was like, wait, do they all classify as RCTs? And then
But
I
also
got in
like
my head.
expecting our dear listeners and viewers to get what RCTs are.
I respect. I know Dr. Eric Helms is listening. Dr. Helms, congratulations on your
Shout out
awesome
Dr. Helms.
performance. If you like, this is a test also of our friendship. So I expect a message
Within
saying,
2 days of
within 2 days of the
Within 2 days, I
podcast.
ain't seeing shit, bro. First of all, you're not doing your cardio because we know for a fact you're listening to MNF during your cardio. Shout out to Eric Helms as well for winning his latest show with the WNBF. Now a pro.
And the overall. Is he a
the
pro?
Overall. He's a pro now, yeah, I think. If you win the overall in WNBF show, you're a pro.
But was it
Shout
a
out to
world
Eric
show
Helms.
or like a New Zealand show?
You can become a pro at a national show.
Was that it? The big win? Because he
Yeah.
didn't. Did he write the word pro?
Eric Helms
Anyways.
is way too humble. Eric, shout out to you. Where were we at? How did we get here?
Oh, no, there you go. For those asking, no pro card.
Oh, no pro
For
card.
now,
Sorry.
WNBF growing pro status is confirmed by an international panel. There we go.
Confirmed by the international.
All right, take it back.
Sorry,
Eric,
Helms.
we're sorry,
Fuck
bro.
you, Eric.
Next time it will be better. No, but honestly, shout out Extreme the session now the ADHD. Last thing.
We came for everyone.
No, that's it actually.
Podcast.
We've covered everything now.
I think we covered
A lot of cool studies coming. App is coming eventually. Milo YouTube channel, subscribe. My channel is not out yet, but subscribe. And yeah, we'll catch you all next time.
Hit the notification bell.
And Spotify and Apple Music, rated 5 stars, please, or don't. We don't care. We love you. Thank you for being patient with us.
Next
More
episode, collab with Mr. Beast.
Mr. Beast, and by Mr. Beast I mean Milo, the Beast, Mr. Beast.
Beast.
Peace.
Peace.